the only way where like you kind of check the box in a lot of people's mind is, did you win it all? And then
Hmm.
what's the next box? Did you go win it all again? Did you go? It's like you just realize it's not a good race to be running, and there's got to be something bigger out there than being the biggest and the baddest at all times.
Welcome to the Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Man, fired up for this conversation today, joined by Coach Drake Bernstein. I'm not going to call you Coach, so if that's okay, I'm just going to call you
That
Drake.
is
As we get,
totally
are
fine
you
and
cool with that,
preferred.
my man?
Fine and preferred. Yep.
Okay. Joining us from Athens, Georgia. I know that we are in the heart of tennis season, so thank you for setting aside some time, Drake, to get in here and talk with us a little bit.
Yeah, happy to be here. Always great to chat with you, Drew.
And gosh, I mean, let's set the stage here. We've known each other a long time, right? Like a long, long time, going all the way back to when you were a player at Georgia, which we would have met for the first time when? Do you recall?
Probably sometime around '08.
Yeah.
And you were kind of my intro to the value of sports psychology and the value of directing your mind, and really kind of some of the science behind it. It sounds simple, and it sounded, I don't know that it was anything earth shattering at the time, but to this day, I'll never forget. We were sitting up there next to court one, and we just were chatting through it all. And it's like, what, you've done the work, let it show. And that's something that I come back to this day. I tell myself that a lot of times as the national anthem is winding up right before a match. Is, you've done the work, let it show.
I remember that too. I vividly remember that, which was not a bad seat, right? As great as the Dan McGill Tennis Complex is, it's an awesome place. But I remember that conversation too.
Right.
So okay, so let's pause on that for a second because I do want to tell some of the stories. But go back even further than that, and I'm curious. Obviously, much of your life has involved the sport of tennis. First as a player for many years, playing at a high level, and now your coaching career, although you've accomplished so much already, I know there's a ton yet to be had there. But how and why tennis? How did all of that get off the ground?
Yeah, it's a great one. I actually played a lot less tennis growing up than probably about 99% of my peers. And I was played about every sport other than tennis until tennis came along. My parents were PE teachers, so it didn't really matter what it was. If it was a game, I wanted to play it. I wanted to compete. Um, I was the master of that trick where you tell your parents how sick you are, and you get to go into work with them on that day. And by about 9 o'clock, I was always magically healed playing basketball or playing games in PE with them. But yeah, it was all sports, and it was all things competitive, and just loved the challenge of sports, and really I kind of fell in love with tennis because there was nothing that sparked me the same way in a practice setting. All the other sports, I love to go out on game day and shoot your free throws, all of that. But it was tennis that kind of kept bringing me back with there's something next, there's something next, there's something next. And my mind is like a little bit wired to what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And in tennis, you don't really need a team practice. You don't really need any setting other than yourself and a basket of balls. And so that was what drew me into tennis. Played a lot of tournaments on the weekends. My parents, again, with them being PE teachers, we couldn't travel and do the week-long tennis tournament thing, so I was doing the Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament, and just practice, play matches, go do it again, go to another tournament, learn, go the next week, learn. There was no academy or anything like that. It was just kind of it was a different path, but one that I feel like has made for a unique perspective in the sport now.
Yeah, that's a really unique path. And I think for some of our listeners that might not be as familiar with kind of the junior tennis circuit, and I hope I don't offend anybody when I say this, but it isn't always the most sane and I think user-friendly environment or culture, right? I mean, there are many unfortunate examples of kids from a very, very early age whose entire lives are dedicated to the sport of tennis. And they're homeschooled from an early age, and they're all over the map playing, is my
Mhm.
understanding of it, I think, which is pretty much on target, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And I was, kids were homeschooled, and I was going to a public school, playing on my high school tennis team. And I think that it kind of it gave me this uniqueness of like, no, tennis is kind of something that you do. It's not your entire life. I
Hmm.
love what I'm doing. But from a young age, I still had, normal social interactions, friends outside of the sport. Really, in Winder, Georgia, there are not a whole lot of people who understand the sport of tennis. So you have no choice but to talk about something else, or to just kind of be a normal kid.
Yeah, so context on that as well. Winder is not far at all from Athens, Georgia, and the sport of choice in near Athens, Georgia, is usually not tennis, as you're talking about. Right?
Correct.
It is not the main event
It's
by any
not.
means. So Drake, like, at what age can you remember kind of making that conscious decision of, okay, I'm really gonna dial in on this and try to go somewhere with this sport?
Oh man, I got such a late start to starting competitive tennis. We had no idea. My parents just signed me up for a tournament. We said, okay, I like playing in the park and I think I could do well. And I go and I lose my first match 6-0, 6-0 in this small level tournament. But then, in tennis tournaments, you have a main draw and you have the consolation. So you're not just one and done. So I got to play consolation. I'll never forget. I won 10-7 in a third set tiebreaker in the consolation. And that was kind of what kept me coming back. It's like, well, like, now, my first ranking ever, I was ranked 223 in the state of Georgia. I'll never forget it. And the cool thing about tennis was that, for better or worse, you get this number next to your name, and you get to watch that climb. And as you get better, it kind of stops climbing and maybe plateaus or fluctuates. But it was kind of that number where I was like, okay, well, that's where I have to go. I'm 223, and maybe one day I'll be top 200 in the state. And then it was just kind of this, addiction's not the right word, because I feel like it was a healthy driver, but just kind of climbing up the rankings. And it never really was a choice of, I need to go do this with my tennis career. I need to go play college tennis. I need to get this out of the sport. It was just something that I love. And the rest kind of took care of itself over time.
Yeah, and so, like, there's so many things in there that pique my interest. One of them being that in a sport like tennis, where so many things are objectively measured, and there's so much that's out there, right? And there's the rankings, and for so many people, that breeds this really challenging dynamic of comparison-based thinking. Right, of like, oh, look at what he's doing and look at what she's doing, and why am I not this? And like, it doesn't sound like you really fed into that at all, though. It was more about kind of your journey. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's the benefit probably of starting at the bottom, is that pretty much anybody that I played was going to be a good win if I could pull it off. And so I had a lot of opportunity in front of me early. And then I think that maybe it helped with my understanding of, well, now that I'm 50 in the state of Georgia, there's another guy that's 200 that's excited to play me. And so, understanding that, hey, you're only as good as your next match out. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, again, I really feel like you said, it's totally accurate that the comparison game is a real thing in tennis. I was kind of fortunate enough, and I think that maybe some of the balance outside of tennis being my whole life was really helpful in not getting
Mhm.
too wrapped up in that. I always was able, the way that my junior career kind of tracked, I was always able to kind of at least convince myself of the underdog role. So,
Hmm.
I'd say that went a long way in terms of feeling pressure out there.
All right, so you're going to need to bridge a little bit of a gap here for us, because what you're describing, although it's a super unique journey and very, very interesting, it isn't exactly the track that somebody would say, "Oh yeah, this guy's headed to go have a great career at Georgia."
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
at the time, it really, and still to date, I mean, for those that are less familiar with college tennis, Georgia has been really kind of the epicenter of college tennis for a long time. I mean, you're a junior player in the heart of the Manny Diaz years. Manny will forever be one of the greatest tennis coaches to ever do it, championship after championship. So, how did it come together for you to be at Georgia?
It was such a kind of incremental thing that the timing was right, that just by the time I was about 17, 18, I was good enough to think that I might have a chance one day to play a match at Georgia. And right, so like I never growing up in Winder, a lot of people might think well, you want to go to Georgia, right? Well, yeah, of course, but I'm never going to be good enough to play at Georgia. And it wasn't until about probably 17 where that was a possibility. Maybe my junior year of high school, it became possible. So I was looking across the South and keeping my options open. But I took my visit to Georgia, and about an hour into the visit, and I had been around plenty. I mean, I would go to matches and all that, but about an hour into the visit, I knew, like, I told myself, Drake, if you ever play a match at Georgia in your 4 years, this will be the most special thing ever. That's like the goal of your tennis. One day, play a match at Georgia. And so I came to Georgia as a walk-on, and Manny and Will Glenn gave me a shot, and they gave me coaching, and my freshman year, I was semi-regular in the doubles, played some singles matches, and really wasn't until my junior or sophomore year that I was a regular in the lineup. But again, one of the benefits of growing up in Winder and then getting the exposure to high level tennis every day is I wasn't even close to what a ceiling could be as a junior. I hadn't had nearly the resources that most of my competitors had. I barely had somebody to hit with, and so now when you get around that every day, and that's your day to day, looks like you're playing with two guys that just won the US Open junior doubles, and that's your practice partner. You have no choice but to get better. And it really just kind of took off throughout the time I was in college. Great mentorship, a great grad assistant sports psychologist. It all came together and the story wrote itself.
Well, no, let's be careful how much credit we give to the sports psychology person there, because I think that it's certain, the work you were doing day in and day out there on the court had more to do with anything else. But I appreciate the nod. Yeah, and I think what you're speaking to is fascinating also from the standpoint of we can't help but evaluate people's capability in large part due to the environment that they exist within.
Mm.
And the environment in which you function, whether you like it or not, will always be a limiting factor of sorts.
Mm.
And so I think in your case, once you got in the environment there, and as you said, you're surrounded by this degree of excellence, and the standard was just dramatically raised, the way that affected your capability, I mean, you became an entirely new player.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big, huge takeaway from that description for me. And then the other thing that can't be ignored is that we go back to your background. So many people whose junior careers are very different from yours, when they get to college, although this might sound strange, they're almost running on fumes already
Mm-hmm.
because they've played so much tennis.
Yeah.
They've grinded so much and they've beaten their body up so much. And so I think it had to be a huge advantage for you that when you came into the program, you had so much energy and enthusiasm and excitement about what was yet to come.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not even like, yes, you do have players that, like you said, are running on fumes, but you also have players who may just be numb to how cool
Yes.
tennis is and how great it is. And to this day, I haven't found that numbness yet. Every day I feel like it's the greatest thing. But like I mentioned with my junior career, my college career, I kind of felt like I got to do the same thing. I had this story in my mind, at least, of being the underdog. And man, like, what a great opportunity. I never would have thought that I'd get to play a match here. And now I'm coming out in front of 2,000 people to play the NCAA tournament. And it always was this opportunity, how cool is this, how cool is this? And you know, when you're in that state of mind and your competition is it's just another day for them, or yeah, I can live without it, you
Mm.
naturally start to get a little bit of a leg up, whether you realize it or not.
But even in that, what you're describing there, Drake, it's a great glimpse into, I think, what has separated you then as a player and now as a coach. Like the sophistication with which you are talking to yourself and choosing to kind of align to certain messages that set you up for success. So many people aren't doing that.
Mm,
You know, the internal dialogue there of how you were mindful of, okay, this underdog mentality gives me an edge, and then a degree of appreciation for and gratitude for the opportunity, right? So like those are all conscious ways in which you are framing your story that make a big difference.
I've had a lot of good people around me, and learning from smart people, I think it has probably been maybe the one of the best things that I've done for myself is there are people out there that have perspectives that help them forward, and there are people out there that have perspectives that maybe hold them back, and learning about those that help you forward seems like the logical thing to do.
Well, I want to make one more comment about your playing career, and then we'll get into a lot of the coaching things that I want to discuss. But um, I don't want to miss this. My memory of you as a player when we worked together, um, I would sum up this way, and it's such a unique combination of two things that are such a driving force in people's performance. Is you always had the ability to balance two things. So one was belief, like you always had this underlying belief that you could do this, right?
Mm,
Which is huge. But then the second thing, you don't always see this, is you just had such a hunger to improve.
mm,
You know, and so I think like you take the example of a person who maybe they have the belief, but they lack the hunger,
mm.
and you just like they're not going to be who they're capable of becoming. It's just not. And so like your hunger for improvement was so apparent to me in everything that you did. So I don't know if you ever used that type of internal language or you thought of it that way, but to me that was such a difference maker for you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It was always like, again, I was the beneficiary of being able to be the one that hasn't proven it yet at every level. Is like, I haven't proven it at number six first in college, and then I haven't proven it at number five, and then I haven't proven it at number four. And my senior year, well, I've done a lot of things with tennis, but I haven't proven to be a leader for the team, right? And it's like, I don't know, always on to something else. Learning has always kind of piqued my interest. And I view the tennis and what you're describing as hunger there as what's the next thing to learn? What's the next thing to learn?
I know I want you to do this because I'm going to miss something, but what get real off real quick. What were like? Give me the accomplishments as a player, championships. Give us something here because I want to put
Yeah.
this in perspective for our listeners.
So coming into college, Georgia had won the NCAAs in 07, and we won it in 08. And I wasn't a starter in any of the NCAA singles matches. I'd like to think that I had a part. We had some injuries mid-season, where I came in and we won some big matches where we were a couple men down, which helped our seeding for the tournament. So we won it in 08. Won a couple SECs, 08, 2011, won the SEC. And my tennis, I finished at the time was top 15 all time in Georgia tennis wins, which would put me up there with some incredible company who I would never associate my level of tennis with. But yeah, it was really uh, a magical 4 years. Yeah, crazy. Even today, like I look back and I think about, you know, the profile coming in versus what actually happened while I was here in college, and it's still a bit wild to me.
All right, so yeah, incredible, right? Incredible run, and then I can remember, and you didn't tell me this, but somebody did. I can't remember who. When I first heard that the next step for you was going to be coaching, I was not the least bit surprised but I was super pumped. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome because this guy has all the makings of a great coach and he isn't even a coach yet. Tell us a little bit about how did that decision kind of clarify for you that coaching was next?
It's kind of interesting because, you know, this love for tennis that I've described, I knew I wanted to be in tennis. I knew I wanted to do something in tennis, and college coaching didn't really seem like a possibility to me as a college player. I have so much respect for my college coaches, for Manny Diaz and Will Glenn. It's like they were like larger than life, you know, and so that never really registered as an option. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go to an academy, I'll go to a country club, and I'm my senior year, I'm firing out dozens of emails to country clubs. Hey, I'd love to come work there one day. And you know, my wife is from Vegas. She was a gymnast here at Georgia. We moved out to Vegas, and I was doing the academy thing. I was doing country club thing at night, and I just felt like something was missing from my coaching experience. And it was that side that Manny and Will, my coaches, had. You know, they just had a broader perspective than what was going on for the 2 hours of practice a day. And I felt like for me to be an effective coach, college actually was the perfect setting for it, because a lot of what I think is important for an athlete goes beyond the lines and beyond seeing them for 2 hours a day. So pretty quickly, about 3 months into the private coaching thing, I realized I got to find my way back into college. And I was fortunate enough to get a start at University of Alabama with a longtime head coach, experienced head coach, Jenny Mines, and got to learn about. I never would have thought, you know, 6 months before I would be a women's college tennis coach. And you know, it was always, okay, I'll do this, and then I'll go over to the men's side later. But pretty quickly, I fell in love with the women's side of it, because there's so much of a I feel like the mental, the emotional, the psychological side outweighs where maybe on the men's side it's really physical. And if a guy's got a huge serve and a huge forehand, he's going to win, and you can't keep up. It's too good. And I feel like on the women's side, on day to day, if we approach things right, we can find a way to win. So I found this love for the women's side. And then actually 1 year after being at Alabama, which is a great year, the Georgia assistant job came open. I got to work with another college tennis legend, Jeff Wallace, and I guess the rest was history.
Yeah, you've only worked with legends, it sounds like, which is one reason why
Yeah,
you're
very fortunate in
smart
my
move.
mentorships.
Okay, so this is always the one that I enjoy. I want you to go back and critique your earliest days in coaching. When you look back on it now, what were some of the mistakes you were making that you didn't realize you were making?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, I was as a player, like I said, I kind of had this chip on my shoulder, and I was looking for something to prove all the time. And as a player, that may have come off a bit aggressively and potentially disrespectfully as a player. And as a coach, early, that was kind of my thing. Is like I wanted to make this kind of villain story where and people are out to get us, people are this and that, they're saying this about us, and my focus was very external at the time. Who can I find to pick a fight with? What can I find a problem with this team for? And I don't know, the more that I do this, the more that I see how futile it is to worry about anything other than yourself and your own performance on a given day, and you know, putting the externals aside and focusing on what you have to offer.
So how did that clarify for you that the external really shouldn't be the focus?
It's a good question, because it wasn't like, I don't think there was any kind of magic moment. It's just over time and really watching the teams that were winning. Nobody else was doing that. It just looked like they knew something that everybody else didn't, and they had this kind of secret that they were keeping quiet, and how they were always performing at their best in the biggest moments. And it never was because they were picking a fight with somebody. And so you watch people, you watch some of these places beat you enough. You watch some of these places hold up trophies, and you say, what is it that they're doing that I'm not? I don't know. It just kind of simmered back a bit, and as we've experienced some success, I really start to feel more and more validation of that approach by the day.
Okay, so you know, the year at Bama, then you come to Athens and you're working alongside Jeff for, was it 8 years? How many years with
11,
Jeff?
11,
Oh, sorry,
yeah,
11
yeah.
years, which was an incredible run. How many championships during that time?
I don't know. Maybe my guess would be 6 or so SECs, and we won a national indoor championship.
Yeah, well, when you can't remember how many championships, that is a good problem to have, my man. Like that's a
Maybe,
good
yeah, maybe.
that is a good problem to have. So through those 11 years, you know, what's normal for any assistant, I would, you know, in my experience is you're learning a lot. You're beginning to kind of formulate your ideas around, all right, I'm aspiring to be a head coach eventually, so I'm seeing the things that I really want to be sure are remain a part of the program, or I'm formulating my philosophies. Like, talk a little bit about some of the things you can remember learning through those years working with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeff and I had a great balance early. I'm a 22-year-old assistant, and I'm coaching players that I was in school with when I started here at Georgia. When I was at Alabama, I'm coaching, one of the girls on the team was older than me, and so early in it, Jeff had his kind of guiding me in directions, and I think as we grew a confidence in each other, he let me spread my wings a little bit more, let me try this, let me dabble on that, let me get a little bit more involved with the recruiting, and you know, really kind of figuring out. I don't know that it was ever figuring out as much as it was experiencing. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, let's let this happen. And we took this bad loss. Okay, what does that mean? How do I interpret that to in a constructive way for myself moving forward? Or we've won this. How does that make me feel? Well, pretty quickly you find that you hear it all the time, but you do find that like winning wears off pretty quickly, as far as like you think I'm gonna feel like this when we win this championship, and it's like that's great, and then 2 days later you're back to feeling like yourself again, and it never lasts that long. So it had to be something that was bigger than winning, and I still feel like, relatively young in coaching terms, and I'm still figuring out exactly what those things are, but I do know it's way more about the process and way more about the years and the investments being made than the actual trophies to show for them.
Hmm. Okay, so let's pull something together here because I want to stay on this theme. And that, you know, you had this great run with Jeff for 11 years. You then took over the program as head coach, and you're in year three. And you guys have won. You just most recently won the NCAA indoors just weeks ago. How many national championships since you've taken over?
3.
So three national championships, and you're only in year three. You've been national coach of the year. So on paper, just a really full resume already, all these amazing things, lots of accomplishments. And yet I hear you kind of wrestling with, well, gosh, like what are we truly aiming for? And like, what is the goal and what is the vision? So like, tell us a little bit about, like, how are you wrestling with that right now? And like, what are you coming up with?
Yeah, and it's a crazy thing, like I was talking about with you win and you feel good for a couple days, and actually the after we won indoors, it's like or won NCAAs last year, I was like, oh, I've kind of like checked off all the boxes, and I got named National Coach of the Year. And it's like, what else is there to do? I've done everything, and you're going on vacation. We're going to Hilton Head, and you're excited for this vacation. You've played it out in your mind a million times, how great it's going to be at the beach. And now you're a national champion at the beach. It's going to be that much cooler. Well, as soon as you get to the beach, you run into the beach with your 5-year-old son, and a stingray gets you in the foot, and it's back to reality. So that was kind of the moment where I'm like, man, the world doesn't really care that you just won NCAAs.
And neither does the stingray, right?
And neither does the stinger. He surely doesn't care. So I couldn't walk the rest of the vacation. But it's interesting because you do kind of run into this thing, because what I know now is that, well, you win, and let's say that you go win another one. Well, then what's the expectation? People are going to say, well, okay, great, go do it again. And you'll just run this rabbit hole until you exhaust yourself, and you realize that was never really what you were after. So after last year, I knew there would be more to this. And it's like, I don't know what I'm going to learn next. I don't know where I'm going to kind of continue to develop as a coach. I just know that, like, there is more out there. There is something out there. And really the last few weeks I feel like it's starting to crystallize a bit more. And really that in kind of summary, where my head's been at is like, the most important thing that I could do every day, and the most important thing that I could teach anybody, any of our ladies, interactions I could have with our staff, is that we're doing what we do, and we're doing everything with love, and love, overflowing amounts of love, not obnoxious, but is our heart fully in everything. When it's a practice on Tuesday and it's cloudy, can we still go out and practice with love? When it's time to play another top 5 team in the country, what is showing? But it is our love showing, right? And I think that's been a really big thing with college age student athletes these days. Is there's so many distractions out there, and there's so many externals that can get you distracted away from, like, why am I doing what I do? I have this appreciation for what I'm doing. Yeah. But the other, like, I also have expectations. People want me to win. And it's like, it's really, really easier than ever, I feel like, and I'm sure you have more experience, but I feel like it's easier than ever to lose sight of what's important. And that's like, man, we all get one life. We need to make the most of it. And you don't make the most of it by sitting on the couch and taking naps, or sitting on Instagram, Netflix all day. You get it by going out and living. And when we get to play these big matches, that's really where we can feel alive the most. And so again, just kind of dabbling with these thoughts of how do you let your love for whatever it is that you're doing in the moment show.
Man, there's so much in there to think through, and it's so applicable, I think, to all walks of life. I've said for years that I feel, particularly in the world of sports, people are in one of two camps. They're either like on the climb, where they're trying to achieve many of the things that you have already achieved, and there's good reason that they're on the climb, and there's all these discoveries they haven't made yet. Or if they have fulfilled some of these goals, like you're describing, they're now trying to make sense of everything. Because inevitably what happens is, and I've seen this in so many ways, shapes, and forms, that when you check those things off your list, if you're fortunate enough to do so, you realize very quickly that although they should be celebrated, the fulfillment that comes with them fades pretty quickly. It really does. It really does. I mean, I'll never forget, and you're familiar with my work with football over the years, and I'll never forget, after we won our first national championship, we were on the bus. We had, late game, stayed the night, of course, in Indy. We're on the bus the day after, headed to the airport. And I'm sitting on the bus, and I'm not going to say who, of course, but there's a staff member that I kind of see out of the corner of my eye. and he's kind of got a long look on his face. And I'm thinking like, well, okay, a lot of possible reasons for that, right? Late night, a lot of celebrating that took place, don't want to assume anything here. And so I kind of just made my way over there and sat down next to him. And I said, hey man, like, you good? Like, what's up? And he knew I was maybe the right person to talk to about this. But he said, man, I just thought it was going to feel different than it does.
Mm.
And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, I've spent, because it was his first national championship.
Mm.
And he said, I've spent so many years, making sacrifice after sacrifice, chasing this in my career, right? Like chasing this thing. And we did it. And I know, although it hasn't been long, obviously we just did it last night, but I told myself all these years it was going to feel a certain way, and it doesn't.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think so many athletes or coaches or both get that realization and they don't know what quite to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Spot on. I mean, there are moments where you look back and you say, wow, it still hasn't really sunk in all the way to me, kind of, this success. But there are other times where I was like, well, so what? Like it's you still have your day-to-day problems. You still have your challenges. And one of the things I think, the fortune that I had, my first season, we made the final of the NCAA tournament, and which by college tennis's standards, I don't think anybody was predicting that for Georgia in that year. And then the following year, in our minds, we were the happiest finalist you would ever meet. People would say, "Oh, tough, you lost in the finals." No, 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 you don't get it. We are the happiest people on the planet. We just had such a great run. And then the following year, you win the national championship. And one of the things that was so apparent to me was like, it's so disproportionate, the difference between being celebrated as a finalist and a champion is second and first, that you cannot possibly make sense of it. It makes no sense, because in college athletics these days, to do anything, even heck, to make the round of 16 of a national event, there's so many people that are trying out there. There's so many competitors out there, much less a Final Four. I mean, that should be celebrated to the moon. But meanwhile, the only way where like you kind of check the box in a lot of people's mind is, did you win it all? And then what's the next box? Did you go win it all again? Did you go? It's like you just realize it's not a good race to be running. And there's got to be something bigger out there than being the biggest and the baddest at all time.
And I think, Drake, like what you're describing too, this is where a lot of kind of the importance of us being able to have nuance to our thinking comes in here, right? Because there is a way, although it's not easy, there is a way to recognize and acknowledge that, hey, winning national championships won't make me happy forever. And yet we still don't minimize the accomplishment. And that's the nuance that you want to be able to get, that I think a lot of people are wrestling with and trying to get there, because it is a huge deal. To your point, it's unbelievable. It is awesome. However, it isn't the thing that's going to like make me feel great in perpetuity, right? It just isn't what it is.
Yeah, it will fade. And it's like you said, it is nuanced, because we sit here, and my kind of tennis example is, we talk about how winning doesn't matter. And we say, and it's so confusing for a student athlete to hear from their coach. I don't care if you win. I care about what it looks like when you set out for a match. And when you set out, everything should look like you're doing everything within your willpower to win. But ultimately, we've got to detach a little bit from that result of winning and worry more about the way. What's our focus of the day? Are we only going to be happy? And I kind of was chatting with a player last week. It's like, you going out in the way that you perform it, like you're match to match. It's almost like you're preserving your contentment. You're just making sure that you're not upset about your performance. And if you win, you're preserved for another day. And if you weren't bad, then you're preserved for another day. And it's like, that can't be how you approach anything. You've got to get out there and just know who you want to be with it. And I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with it, but it is a nuance of, can we do our best to win, but not focus on wins and losses?
Yeah. Well, that's the brilliance of great coaching, what you're describing. I mean, I think of literally just yesterday, I was in Athens with football, and we're sitting in a team meeting, and another brilliant, great coach who sits right not far from you, Kirby Smart, puts up in the team meeting a clip of a player who made a really bad mistake and then proceeded to turn around and run toward the ball so much faster than everybody else on the field. I mean, it's unbelievable effort. And his comment was, don't care about the mistake. Like, I'm not showing this clip because somebody made a mistake. I could care less about the mistake. What I want to be sure no one misses here is, look at that effort. It's unbelievable effort. And it's the same thing you're saying, like, hey, let's show up a way that we can be proud of.
Absolutely. And that's the only thing within your control. That's
That
the only
too.
thing. There's too many variables in sports and life, and in your world with business. There's too many variables to worry about controlling all of them. You can't.
Right. No doubt about it. Okay, so a couple more things here I want to cover, Drake, in our time. One of them would be this. How do you hope to be described by your players?
That's a great question. I want them to walk away from this experience the same way that I walked away from mine, knowing that I wouldn't be who I am today without it, and knowing that I grew from my freshman to my senior year. And we like to think of our young ladies coming in as a girl, as a recruit, and they come out as a woman. And if I have played any role in accelerating that, then I've fully done my job.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to hear you, because a part of your story that I love so much is when you're talking about Manny and Will, and I can just, even in your voice, hear the fondness you have for them. And I know those guys too, so it's cool. It's cool to hear you reflect that about them. And so, and then let's think about this one too. How would you describe let's do it this way. When players leave your program, and they might be asked, what's the culture like within Georgia women's tennis? What do you hope they'll say?
I think really a couple things. Josh Brooks, our athletic director, has this wonderful thing that he tasks us with in every head coach's meeting. He says, make sure we're passing the 20-year test. And championships are great, but are we passing this 20-year test where pretty much what I just described of when a player comes back 20 years from now, they say, this was the greatest experience of my life, right? And I think what goes into that is growth, is understanding where I've gone from point A to point B, and I want them to be able to look back at their experience and say, while I had the greatest experience, while I had so much fun doing that, I learned kind of the standard about myself of how I'm going to go about my business. And I do think it's one of the benefits of being at, let's say, a championship level program, is that we're allowed to keep a high standard, and the expectations are high, and it is demanding. And if they can walk out fully understanding that, and look back at their time and say that this was a 4-year period where they were asked to dig deep and elevate themselves while learning to have fun while they were at it at the same time, and that's the culture that we live in, then we're really onto something.
Great balance. Okay, we got to end with a really serious and important question here, and that is, have you discovered pickleball yet?
I have. I was an early adopter on pickleball.
Okay. What does that look like? What's the pickleball looking like these days?
It was at one point, I was like with so much pickleball. I actually put a pickleball court in my backyard, and these days it gathers a lot of pollen. With 3 young ones, it doesn't have much time. But I'm thinking that it'll be a nice surface for them to learn some tennis on. But pickleball is great. To me, it's a much more accessible racket sport. If you're picking up later in life, if you're, 40 years old, it's a way to kind of identify with a racket sport without having to, learn the intricacies of tennis. I could take Drew Brannon out on a tennis court for lessons 6 months, and he'd be worse than when we started. I could take him out for a pickleball lesson, and in about 10 minutes, him feel significantly improved. And so I don't know, it's really accessible. I think there's this kind of, in the tennis world, people think that it's your tennis or pickleball. It's like, no, there's room for both. There's room for basketball and baseball, man, the NFL, and there's room for college football, and there's room for NFL football. I think that it's all good. It's great.
Well, hey, you're in good shape, because I'll tell you, we put a pickleball court in our backyard about 2 years ago, and you can't have a better teenager hub gathering spot. So hey, the kids will be at your house whether you want them to be or not in the future as you get older. So you're ahead of schedule. Strategically speaking,
we need to play now. You spilled the beans that you play. We need to play.
I'm not that interested in matching up against a guy who's in the top 15 in wins in Georgia tennis history.
Hey, we could play together. How about that? Okay,
I'll do that. I'll be your doubles partner anytime. Well, man, look, this has been a really, really fun conversation. I mean, I'll connect two things here as we finish, but as I go way back to 2007, 2008, whenever it was, of like us sitting in the stands that day, if you had said to me, hey, guess what? In 20 years almost, you guys will be doing a podcast talking about, your Drake's many accomplishments. It's just cool to think about that, right? It's really, really cool to think about that.
Yeah, it's funny. You sit here and you get lost in your day to day, and it's just amazing to watch life play out the way that it does. And obviously with what you're doing, and you're helping the football team here win championships, and from grad assistant days, helping some tennis player figure his head out all the way to now. It's amazing. Like I said, it's crazy to think that it was almost 20 years ago, but time flies when you're having fun.
That's right. Well, I can't thank you enough. I know this conversation is going to be a big contributor to so many people's growth and reflection around their life on all levels, whether it be personal or professional. So thank you for taking the time to do it. And we'll be pulling hard for you guys the remainder of the year, which I know you're in full swing right now. So wish you guys nothing but the best this spring.
Thanks for having me on, Drew. Go Dogs.